G'day everyone, it's Chris from Project DIY, back for part 2 of this rocket stove build. If you're a new subscriber, a big warm welcome to you, and if you're a current subscriber, thanks for tuning back into the video, to the channel. So we're continuing where we left off last time. We finished up with the ashtray. Here we're welding the actual K-type rocket stove together. I'm just putting on the backing plate here. This will just enclose that at the far end of the air intake tube. And then we'll get into welding the bigger parts on. So the air intake tube to the chimney stack, weld them on, get them nice and square, and then we're set to weld on the feeder tube. Just tacking everything up. One of the things with welding you've got to remember is if you tack everything up, the metal shouldn't move as much. Still move a little bit, but hopefully the tacks are strong enough that when you have time to go in and do that final weld across the larger areas, it'll actually hold the steel in place and won't warp too much. Just sort of take a couple of seconds to remind people, if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button. Make sure the notification bell is on, that way you won't miss any of my future videos. And also hit that like, and if you would, share the video. Share the video to your friends, get the word out there. It'd be greatly appreciated. So here I'm just welding the base of the rocket stove together. Last weld on the base before we actually go fixing the feeder tube in. So here I'm just fixing the legs to the bottom of the rocket stove. I've just used a couple of pieces of wood there, just jacks it off the ground a little bit, and it's going to help me achieve the angle I'm after, which is 45 degrees. I wanted to raise this one off the ground a fair bit because I didn't want any heat to go down and actually affect the ground underneath where I'm actually using the rocket stove. So if I'm out in a camping ground or a park area, I'm not going to leave a dead patch when I leave. It's going to allow the air to get around a little bit more and keep the ground nice and cool. Also, if I'm using this during summer, and being in Victoria in Australia, our summers are pretty hot, and if it's not a total fire ban day and we want to cook something on the rocket stove, it's also not going to accidentally light any of the local area on fire. So this is a cap I made for the feeder tube. I'll connect that up with some motorcycle chain I've got lying around. I'm just using some plug welds here just to hold this piece in place. This just allows me to make a little bit more airtight without actually having to use any special fittings or anything like that. So that's the ashtray I made in the last video, just figuring out the best way to attach it. I opted to go between the legs here with a threaded hole in the middle there, a 10mm hole, and what's going to happen is it's going to allow me to screw a knob down on top of that ashtray or underneath that ashtray, and it's going to hold that firm up underneath the rocket stove there. And at the back of the ashtray there, I've just put a little upright, and that's just going to stop me pushing it in too far, and that works really, really well. And they're the motorcycle chains I was telling you about for the hinges. Just welded them on and it works really well. Opens up and down pretty good. It's just got that one pivot point. You see the insert there, and that actually seals pretty good. It's a bit of an interference fit and it pops down nicely. So I'm just giving the stove, now that it's complete, a bit of a clean with some acetone. Taped up the handles so I don't get any paint or overspray on those, and just giving it a real good clean. And I'm going to hit it with some spray on Potbelly Black. It's a high heat paint that cures once you get it up to temperature. So it leaves like almost like a ceramic finish on it, and it's really quite good. So here I'm making the grill plate. This is going to sit on top of the rocket stove. I thought I'd just try this pattern, that way it's removable for cleaning. It just sits on top quite nicely, and it's very, very sturdy, so I can put a saucepan or a pot or anything on top and have got that problem of it falling over or teetering to one side. I ground the slots for where it sits on top of the rocket stove in there with the grinding wheel that came with the angle grinder, so I finally found a use for that since I don't really use grinding stone wheels at all. There she is, all finished. I didn't end up painting the grill. I thought, well, the heat that it's going to get, it's going to be probably pointless, so I opted just to leave it bare steel. That's the maker's mark I put on there. I think it came up really nice. It looks really good. And yeah, we'll get into firing it up just in a minute. So the bits of wood I'm using there are bits of old pallets. I get a few pallets now and then, and I thought, well, instead of having them just sitting in the backyard taking up space, I'll chop them up and use them as fuel for the rocket stove, and they turned out really well. It's only pine, quick burning, but that's all you need. At the end of the day, the rocket stove is a very efficient burner of wood. You see the bits aren't too big. I'll show you in a minute around about the size I use. No bigger than my thumb, so probably half an inch across. And that's I found that to be a really good size to burn well. You fit a few pieces in here and you can keep feeding it. And it doesn't clog up or anything, and it burns nice and clean as well. So you get a little bit of smoke at the start until the rocket stove gets up to heat. Once it gets up to heat, it'll start burning really, really well and efficiently, and it'll start using that lower air intake tube to pull the air through and then up the chimney. And a lot of that smoke on the outside is also the high heat paint curing as well. So just showing the temperature there, it gets up to about 380 odd degrees. At the grill top there, 395. It's yeah, it's burning pretty hot. and that's about the size of wood I use. So most of the wood's about that size, about the thickness of your thumb, and about obviously as long as the feeder tube is as well, so it fits in there quite nicely. Okay, well, you don't build a rocket stove for nothing, so we're going to do a bit of a test cook, just with some vegetables and a couple of steaks. So this is the last video obviously in this series. It's only a 2-part series. Just a big thank you for taking the time to watch the video. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks everyone.